How about this for a real ale drinker's paradise? 4 pubs in just one stretch of road. Now, one is a free house, but the other 3 come courtesy of just one company. Bateman's is one of Britain's few remaining family-run breweries. Established in 1874, this impressive building and its windmill dominate the village of Wainfleet here in Lincolnshire. Here in the museum, they hold a unique record, the largest collection of unopened bottles in the world. 4,500 of them line the walls. And, while you're here, you're also shown the full process of brewing real ale. You start with malt. This is put into a mill and ground into a coarse powder known as grist. Stuart Bateman, you're 4th generation of the Bateman family, and we're here by the mash tun. Now, all this equipment above the mash tun looks quite complex. What exactly is going on here?
It's not really complex. It's very, very traditional equipment. As you say, we're by the mash tun where we're actually going to dissolve the sugars out of the grains. Now, it's important that we get exactly the right mix of water, or what's called brewing liquor, with the grains. Now, if you went to a larger brewery, that would all be metered in and computerized in. But here, we do it completely by hand. Now, what we do is we actually look for something called the brewer's wave. You want to make sure he's got the right amount of cold water going in for the consistency, the right amount of hot water for the temperature, but also he's got to make sure he's got the right amount of grist coming in. So he will operate the 3 handles at once and adjust them. And if the grains and the brewing liquor come in and they plop down to the bottom, the consistency is too thick. If it comes down in a straight line, then it's far too thin. But if it comes down in a nice elongated fashion, then that is the brewer's wave, and that's when he knows he's got exactly the right consistency. So the grains and the brewing liquor have been in the mash tun for approximately 3/4 of an hour, which is the ideal time for the brewing liquor to actually break down all the sugars. So the sugars are actually dissolved, and what we're left with is something called sweet wort. That sweet wort is then pumped up to this vessel here, leaving behind all the spent grains, which are shoveled out into a trailer for the local farmer to take away for cattle feed.
I've heard brewers in the past talk about a rollicking boil, or a rollicking good boil.
Yeah.
Enlarge on that. What exactly are they
A rollicking
talking about?
boil is basically, within this vessel here, we have steam coils. We'll boil for 3/4 of an hour. It's got a tube in the middle, and the pressure at the bottom, created by the steam coils, will force the liquid up through the middle of the tube, and it will fall over the sides. And so it's basically a rotating boil, but I say in the brewing industry it's known as a rollicking boil.
And you add full flower hops here at Bateman.
Yes,
How
we do.
significant is that?
Very, very, very significant indeed. You can see from these are full flower hops. A lot of brewers now will actually use hop oils or hop pellets to save cost, basically.
But they're not the same?
Oh, nowhere near the same, no. I mean, we use Goldings and Fuggles full flower hops here, which give nice aroma, a good floral aroma, and they give bitterness as well. So if you want a completely rounded bitter and aroma from hops, you must use the full flower hops.
The hop wort is then drained into the hop back, which literally holds the hops back, much like a sieve. It's here that special flavours can be added, like strawberries, toffee, whiskey and cloves.
So the wort's now come out of the hop back, and we have to cool it down, because yeast is a living organism, and we must make sure it's exactly the right temperature for it to ferment and be in a situation where it's going to multiply satisfactorily. So we'll take it down to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it's pumped into the fermenting vessels, ready for fermentation.
There's an overwhelming smell in here, quite a sort of pungent smell. What exactly is that, Stuart?
To be honest with you, having lived with it for so long, I don't actually recognise it myself.
But try bottling it.
It takes you back, and you can see, if you look at the vessel, you can see it's aggressively fermenting now, and all the bubbles are coming to the top. And part of the fermentation process, what you're looking for is alcohol, but you're also looking for carbon dioxide. And it's that carbon dioxide smell that hits you in the face. We must make sure that we brew every batch of beer exactly the same. There's a lot of kind of home brewers will brew a good pint of beer, but the pint of beer they brewed last week and next week will be completely different. So what we must make sure is that people drink Bateman's because they like Bateman's, and it's got to be the same pint they had last week last month and last year.
These are actually cask-conditioned ales. What exactly are those?
This is going to be cask-conditioned beer, and at the moment it's called rough beer or green beer because it's not actually mature. What we're going to do is we're going to mature it in cask, and that's why it's called cask-conditioned. And I'll take you to the cask conditioning cellars and show you what it's all about.
Okay.
In conditioning, the beer is racked into casks. It's filled into these 9-gallon casks, where we also add isinglass finings.
Isinglass finings, that's a new one. What's that?
Basically, it's the fining is it's a clearing agent, which is it's the swim bladder of a deep water fish. It is extraordinary. I mean, the bigger brewers will use certain man-made fibres, but there's nothing as good as actually using proper isinglass finings. So when the casks are full, they'll come in here, and the maturing process is secondary fermentation. And during secondary fermentation, the sugar will be eaten by the yeast that comes back alive as it's warmed up again. It will slightly strengthen the beer, and it will also produce carbon dioxide again. And that carbon dioxide in these sealed containers will be under such pressure, it will drop in liquid form back into the beer and give it that condition. So that's why it's called the conditioning part of the process.
Stuart, I know it's traditional at the end of these brewery tours to have a heavy tasting session. Any chance?
Well, it's normal to have a heavy tasting session at the beginning and the end. I've missed out on the beginning, so I'll have some at the end. Come along.
Thought you'd never offer.